The alarms screamed across the colony sky as fireballs rained down from above. Humans ran in every direction, confused, terrified, and unprepared. No one expected an alien attack so soon, especially not during the peace talks. The skies turned red with smoke and flame, and the ground trembled with the sound of alien boots hitting soil. It wasn't just war. It was a surprise slaughter. Tarin, barely 17, had been working in the agriculture dome when the first blast threw him off his feet. He crawled out through the broken glass, coughing on the ash that filled his lungs. The soldiers outside were already gone or dead. The air smelled of burning wires and fear. His hands shook as he picked up a fallen rifle, even though he had no idea how to use it. He only knew one thing: he had to survive. The world he knew ended in less than an hour. He watched from behind a crate as strange armored creatures marched across the colony center. They were bigger than humans, faster, and their weapons glowed with unnatural energy. Tarin tried not to cry, not to make a sound, but when the crate was kicked over, he screamed anyway. A shadow loomed over him, tall, massive, and armed. He raised the rifle in fear, but his fingers failed him. He closed his eyes, thinking that was the end, but the death never came. Instead, a flash of orange fur, claws, and silver armor blurred past him. The alien who had found him fell to the ground, chest pierced by a glowing spear. Tarin opened his eyes slowly and saw her. A huntress unlike anything he'd ever imagined. She was beautiful, terrifying, and covered in battle gear. Her long red hair blew in the wind, and her sharp eyes scanned him once before turning back to the battlefield. She didn't speak, but her presence was louder than any word. She grabbed his arm and pulled him behind cover, barking in a strange tongue into a device on her wrist. Then she looked at him again, this time slower, as if trying to decide something. Tarin stayed silent, staring at her. Was she here to help, or was this some strange game? Her armor was worn but strong, marked with symbols he couldn't read. And then she spoke, her voice deep and strange, but with enough English to say one thing clearly. "Stay close, human. Run and you die." Tarin didn't argue. He followed her through burning streets, dodging blasts and screams. She moved like a ghost, fast and silent, cutting down any enemy in her path. He stumbled behind her, doing his best not to slow her down. His lungs burned, his heart raced, but a strange feeling started to grow inside him, hope. She led him to a hidden ridge, overlooking the colony. From there, he saw the whole settlement in ruins. Escape pods were gone, transports destroyed, and rescue was impossible. He collapsed to his knees, shaking. But the huntress knelt beside him and placed a clawed hand on his shoulder. She didn't comfort him with lies. She only said the truth. "You're not ready for this world. But one day you will be." Her ship was hidden beneath camo shields, cloaked by technology far beyond human reach. She guided him aboard, speaking to someone unseen. Tarin tried to understand, but it was all too fast, too strange. The huntress handed him a metal disc and pressed it into his palm. It glowed briefly before going dark. "You remember this. You come back when you are strong. Find me then." Tarin wanted to ask her name. He wanted to know why she saved him. But before he could speak, the ship door closed. Through the window, he saw her standing there tall, fearless, her eyes locked onto his. Then she turned and vanished into the smoke. The ship took off silently, rising above the chaos below. Tarin watched the burning colony disappear beneath him. He didn't know where the ship was sending him, or if he'd ever see her again. All he knew was the huntress's words. "Find me when you're ready." Tarin woke up in a white room, filled with soft humming sounds and blinking lights. The air smelled clean, like filtered rainwater. He sat up quickly, his heart pounding. For a second, he thought he was still in the middle of the attack. But there were no flames, no screams, no monsters. Just silence and metal walls around him. The Ship had delivered him safely to a quiet orbital station, one that belonged to humans. No one on board asked him questions. They only scanned his body, gave him water, and placed a soft blanket around his shoulders. One man tried to ask what happened, but Turin didn't answer. His mind was still with her. The alien Huntress had changed everything. Her voice echoed in his head. Her glowing eyes burned into his thoughts. He remembered how she moved, how she thought, how she saved him without asking for anything in return. And most of all, he remembered what she said before she left him. "Find me when you're ready." Turin didn't understand what she meant at first, but as the days passed, it became clearer. He had been weak, helpless. He couldn't protect anyone, not his friends, not his home, not even himself. That realization was heavier than any injury, and yet he was still alive. She had given him that chance. When Earth Command finally debriefed him, they seemed more interested in the Huntress than his trauma. They asked what species she belonged to, what kind of weapon she used, what ship she flew. Turin didn't answer much. He knew if he told them everything, they would hunt her. They would try to use her. He kept her secret safe. He was sent back to Earth within a week. His colony was lost, and he had no family left. The city where he arrived felt cold and distant. Tall towers, blinking lights, and faces that didn't care. But Turin wasn't the same boy who had worked in the agriculture dome. He walked differently now. He thought differently. Every night, he held the metal disc she had given him. It was smooth and cold, with markings that glowed faintly when he touched it. Sometimes he dreamed of her voice. Sometimes he dreamed of the battle. But most nights, he just stared out the window and promised himself one thing. He would become someone worth finding her again. Turin joined the Academy for Earth Defense, surprising the instructors with his focus. He trained harder than anyone. He studied alien languages, zero-gravity combat, energy blade tactics, survival in hostile zones, and ancient galactic history. His hands bled, his muscles burned. But he didn't stop. They called him obsessed, cold, quiet. Some even mocked him. But Turin didn't care. Every day brought him one step closer to his goal. He didn't need to explain why. He didn't need friends or praise. All he needed was time and strength. Years passed like seasons in fast motion. Turin became faster, stronger, smarter. He stopped being a boy and became a soldier, a leader, a weapon. But deep down, his heart still beat for that one moment, that one promise. That one woman with fire in her hair and lightning in her eyes. The disc had changed. 2. It now pulsed softly with light whenever he gripped it. The techs at the Academy tried to scan it, but the data was unreadable. It was alien beyond anything humans could decode. That made it even more special. It meant it still belonged to her. Then one morning, just before dawn, the disc activated on its own. A thin beam of light rose from it and formed a map in the air. A single location blinked in deep space. Coordinates that didn't exist in any known chart. Turin smiled for the first time in years. She was calling him. The stars outside his window looked the same, but Turin felt everything had changed. He had trained for this moment. He had waited for it in silence, carrying the memory of her in his heart like a weapon. Now the disc she gave him was glowing, steadily, and showing him the path. He didn't hesitate when he submitted his leave request. No one tried to stop him. Some whispered about him leaving the Academy early. Others said he was chasing ghosts. But Turin didn't argue. He packed only what he needed and boarded a private scout vessel. He didn't set a destination in the system. He followed the disc, letting it guide him like a compass through the stars. Days turned into weeks as he flew deeper into uncharted sectors. The universe around him grew darker, colder, and more silent. It felt as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. His food ran low. The ship's AI warned him about entering unstable space. But Turin didn't turn back. He finally arrived at the blinking coordinates. What he found was not a planet or station, but a hidden gateway suspended in empty space. Ancient, covered in markings similar to those on the disk, the gate shimmered with blue energy. When he brought the disk close, the gate came alive with a soft hum. The ship trembled as it passed through. On the other side was a system untouched by human charts. A single green planet floated in the void, wrapped in thick clouds and storms. As his ship approached, the controls froze. The engines powered down gently, and the ship began to descend on its own. Tareen held onto the seat, calm and steady. He knew this was not a trap. She was here. This was her world. The clouds parted as the ship entered the atmosphere, revealing wide forests, glowing rivers, and tall mountains. Creatures with wings soared in the distance. The planet looked untouched by war. The ship landed in a clearing filled with blue grass. The door slid open, and warm wind brushed against his face. Tareen stepped out slowly, boots crunching on the maze. Soft ground. The air was thick with the scent of flowers and something sharp like energy. He scanned the trees but saw no one. Then he felt it. A presence, familiar and overwhelming. He turned, and there she was standing at the edge of the trees, watching him. The same Huntress, older now, but no less powerful. Her armor was different, darker, marked by time. Her fiery red hair was tied back, and her eyes glowed brighter than he remembered. Tareen didn't speak. Neither did she. They just looked at each other, as if all those years vanished in a heartbeat. Then she stepped forward, slow and graceful, like a predator studying its prey. She circled him once, her gaze sharp and thoughtful. He stood firm and silent, letting her judge what he had become. "You came," she said finally. "I'm ready," he replied without fear. She smiled slightly and motioned for him to follow. They walked through the forest together, side by side, but not touching. She didn't ask him what he had done or what he had learned. She already knew by looking at him. Her world was filled with strange life, glowing trees, and floating rocks. He stared in wonder, but kept walking without slowing down. They reached a large stone temple built into a cliff. Guards in shining armor stood at the entrance. They looked at Tareen, then at her, and stepped aside. Inside, soft firelight danced across ancient walls. She led him to a chamber with weapons, armor, and old banners from forgotten wars. She turned to him and spoke without hesitation. "If you walk through this door, your old life ends. You will be one of us. You will fight, bleed, and carry our name. You may never return to the world that raised you. Are you still ready?" Tareen placed the disc on the altar beside her. He looked her in the eyes, steady and sure. Then he nodded once. "I came to find you. I'm not leaving." The door creaked open with a low hum as Tareen stepped into the temple chamber. A strange heat filled the room, not from fire, but from the energy pulsing through the walls. Symbols glowed faintly on every surface, written in ancient language he couldn't read. Yet somehow he felt them whispering to him. The Huntress stood behind him in silence, watching his every move. She didn't offer guidance or warnings. She simply let him walk the path alone. Tareen felt the weight of her presence, not as a protector this time, but as a witness. This was his trial, and she would not interfere. At the far end of the chamber stood a platform with a weapon resting upon it. It was unlike any blade he had ever seen. Curved, sleek, and glowing with faint blue lines. As he stepped closer, the lights on the walls pulsed brighter. The blade reacted to his presence. It knew he was there. Tareen reached for the hilt, expecting resistance, but the weapon lifted easily. A jolt ran up his arm, sharp and cold. His body stiffened as a vision flashed across his mind. He saw battles long past, warriors who had held this blade before him, and a symbol of a phoenix rising from flames. When the vision ended, the Huntress finally spoke. "You are chosen now. The blade accepts you. That is the first step. He turned toward her, gripping the blade tightly. There was no fear in his eyes now, only focus. She nodded, her expression unreadable, then turned and walked out of the chamber. Tareen followed, the weapon still pulsing in his hand. As they exited into the open, the mountain wind struck his face like a cold reminder that this was only the beginning. Training began the next morning before the suns had risen. The planet's light came in waves, painted in strange colors. Tareen stood in a circle of warriors, each one taller, older, and stronger than him. None of them smiled. They didn't see him as a guest. He was a stranger, and they would make him prove himself. The Huntress didn't fight for him. She didn't protect him. She stood with the others, watching. Tareen faced challenge after challenge. He was thrown to the ground, bruised, and knocked down over and over. But he never gave up. Every time he fell, he stood up again. Every strike made him sharper. The days blurred into one another. He learned the way of the Huntress tribe's silent movement, energy blade combat, alien survival techniques, and mental focus under pressure. He ran through jungles filled with beasts. He crossed rivers glowing with unknown energy. He slept under stars that whispered ancient songs. His body changed. His heart grew stronger. One evening, while sitting alone sharpening his blade, one of the older warriors approached him. The alien's face was scarred, his eyes glowing faintly under the night sky. He didn't speak at first, just watched Tareen in silence. Then he finally sat beside him and placed a clawed hand on the ground between them. "She saved you once. We all thought she was foolish, but now I see why." Tareen didn't answer. He didn't need to. The warrior stood and walked away, but the moment stayed with him. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was being accepted. Slowly, he was becoming one of them. Weeks passed before the Huntress finally challenged him herself. It happened without words. She stepped into the training circle one morning, blade in hand, eyes locked on his. The others gathered silently. Tareen stepped forward, heart steady, and raised his weapon. The air between them grew tense. Their blades clashed with bright sparks. She moved fast, her strikes clean and deadly. But Tareen had learned her rhythm. He had watched her for years in his mind. He blocked, countered, and held his ground. The fight was not about victory. It was about proving he was no longer the boy she saved. The final blow came when he disarmed her with a twisting strike. She stepped back, breathing hard, and lowered her guard. The circle remained silent until she raised her hand and placed it on his shoulder. Then she whispered something only he could hear. "You found me. And now, I see you're ready." The firelight flickered across the stone walls as Tareen sat beside the Huntress in silence. The duel had ended, but the feeling in the air had not faded. There was respect now, deep and unspoken. Around them, the warriors celebrated with quiet nods and shared drinks. Tareen had earned his place among them. She handed him a carved cup filled with glowing blue liquid. He drank without asking, and the warmth spread through his chest. The taste was sharp, bitter, but full of energy. She said nothing at first. Her eyes studied him like she had done the first time they met, only now with less doubt and more belief. "You came back different," she said finally. "You came back strong." Tareen looked at her and gave a small nod. "I came back for you," he replied. For a long time neither spoke. The wind outside howled softly through the trees. The temple behind them cast shadows that danced like spirits. Tareen felt peace, but also something else building inside him. A question that had burned in his heart since the day she saved him. A truth he needed to understand. "Why did you save me back then?" he asked. The Huntress turned her eyes toward the stars. "Because I saw what you could become," she said. "Even when you were weak, even when you were afraid. I saw fire in your soul. A rare fire that this galaxy no longer respects." Tareen held her gaze and felt his heartbeat rise. It was more than survival now. more than purpose. There was a bond between them, something shaped by time, silence, and shared danger. But just as he opened his mouth to say more, a deep horn echoed through the forest below. The Huntress stood quickly, her face sharp with focus. Warriors dropped their cups and reached for their weapons. Tarin followed her outside, scanning the treetops. Lights moved in the sky, unnatural and fast. The kind that didn't belong to her people. Ships, one of the warriors growled. They found this place. Tarin's blood went cold. He knew those engines, human military, Earth Command. Somehow they had traced him. Or worse, they had traced the disk. The moment he left their world, he became a threat they wanted to control. The Huntress looked at him without blame. She understood the cost of contact. You need to decide now, she said. Are you one of them, or one of us? Tarin didn't hesitate. He stepped beside her and drew his blade. The light in the sky grew brighter as the ships began their descent. He had trained for years, but this would be the first time he fought against his own kind. The warriors formed a circle at the forest's edge, blades ready, bows charged with energy. The Huntress stood at the front, proud and unshaken. Tarin stood beside her, feeling the pulse of war returning to his blood. Only this time, he was not the one being rescued. The first dropships landed with a heavy roar. Soldiers in black armor stormed out with rifles aimed forward. They didn't expect resistance. They didn't expect an army of alien warriors. Tarin stepped forward and shouted in their language, "Leave now. This world is not yours." One of the soldiers raised a hand. Tarin Wells, you are ordered to return under Earth Command regulation. Surrender peacefully or face punishment. Tarin shook his head slowly. I already chose. I already found where I belong. The tension broke like glass. Energy arrows flew through the air. Human weapons fired back in loud bursts. The clearing turned into a storm of light, sound, and movement. Tarin fought side by side with the Huntress, cutting through the chaos with deadly focus. He didn't see humans anymore. He saw invaders. He saw the same destruction that had taken his colony. And he would not let it happen here. Not again. Not to her. The ground shook as a human mech stepped out of a dropship. A towering machine armed with cannons and steel fists. The soldiers cheered behind it. Tarin looked at the Huntress. She gave him a nod, and together they charged. Asterisk the ground split beneath their feet as the mech fired its shoulder cannon into the trees. Fire burst in all directions, and the forest lit up with flame and smoke. The warriors scattered, but not in fear. They regrouped with trained precision, forming tight squads that attacked from every angle. Tarin and the Huntress led the charge. Straight into the path of the giant machine. Blades struck metal with sparks, but the mech's armor was strong. Too strong for normal weapons. Its arms swung wide, knocking warriors away like toys. Tarin dodged under a sweeping strike, rolled to the side, and leapt onto a broken tree trunk. From there, he launched himself onto the mech's back. The machine shook violently as he climbed toward the control panel at its neck. The pilot inside shouted something, trying to throw him off. But Tarin pulled his blade and stabbed it deep into the joint near the shoulder. The energy pulsed through the weapon and into the mech's core, causing it to shudder. On the ground, the Huntress barked a signal. One of the archers fired a charged arrow directly at the weakened spot Tarin had cut. The impact exploded in blue light, and the mech stumbled backward. Tarin jumped free just before it fell with a thunderous crash. The battlefield went silent. For a brief moment, the human soldiers paused, unsure. Their strongest weapon was down. Their enemy had not run. They had fought with honor, speed, and fire. Tarin stood in front of the broken machine, breathing hard, his blade still glowing with energy. "Leave this place," he shouted. "We will not surrender. We will not kneel." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Some lowered their weapons. Others stepped back slowly. A voice came from the ship above, cold and firm. "Taurine Wells, you are now marked as a traitor. You have aligned yourself with a hostile force. You will not be forgiven." The Huntress stepped beside him, her gaze locked on the ship above. "Then let them mark you. You carry our blood now. Our fight, our future." The ships began to retreat. One by one, they lifted into the sky and vanished through the clouds. Earth Command had not expected a battle. They had expected fear. But what they found was unity. And they knew they would not win this world easily. As the last ship disappeared, the warriors let out a cry of victory. Drums echoed through the forest. Fires were lit again, not in war but in celebration. Taurine stood still, watching the smoke rise, his thoughts caught between what he had left and what he had gained. Later that night, the Huntress found him alone by the river. The moonlight reflected in the water, and the stars above were brighter than ever. She sat beside him in silence for a while, her armor off, her eyes softer than he had ever seen them. "You could still go back," she said. "You could leave this world and be free from war." Taurine shook his head slowly. "I was never free, not even before. You gave me a choice. And I made it." She looked at him, and for the first time she smiled not with pride, but with something deeper. Something that carried warmth, sorrow, and hope all at once. "You've become more than I expected," she whispered. "More than I hoped." Taurine reached for her hand and held it gently. Her fingers were strong, calloused, but they did not pull away. For the first time since they met, there was no danger between them, no fire, no blood. Just peace in the distance. Songs rose from the warriors' camp. They sang of honor, of victory, and of unity. Taurine listened with closed eyes, feeling the rhythm in his bones. The galaxy was vast, cruel, and cold. But here, on this hidden world, he had found meaning. The Huntress leaned her head against his shoulder. Her voice was quiet but clear. "You're not just ready anymore. You are mine." Taurine stood before the ancient council of the Huntress's people, the elders seated in a wide circle of stone thrones, carved with stories of past warriors. The flames in the center pit flickered high, casting shadows across their faces. Each elder held a staff tipped with glowing crystals, symbols of rank and wisdom. They had summoned him not for punishment, but for a decision. Now that the threat from Earth had been revealed, the council believed war would return. They needed to decide whether to remain hidden or strike first. Taurine was no longer an outsider. His voice mattered here. He stepped forward, calm and strong. "We cannot hide. If we wait, Earth will come again. Not to speak, not to listen, but to conquer. We must prepare, not just to fight, but to protect what we are." There was a long silence before one of the elders spoke. "And if they send more machines like the one you faced, more weapons, more lies, would you still raise your blade for us?" Taurine looked around at the glowing eyes watching him. "I would raise it again and again. Because this world is worth fighting for. Because your people gave me purpose when mine left me broken. And because I promised her I would never run again." The fire roared higher as the elders slammed their staffs against the ground. One by one, they stood and bowed their heads. The youngest elder stepped forward and placed a carved pendant around Taurine's neck. It shimmered with the symbol of the phoenix. "You are no longer just a warrior. You are now a bonded flame, bound to her, bound to us. From this day forward, your name will be remembered with ours." The ceremony was sacred, known only to the chosen. That night, the skies lit up with lights from the temple towers, and the people danced in honor of their new champion. Taurine moved through the crowd with quiet steps, not used to attention, but grateful for their respect. Later, the Huntress took him to the top of the mountain where the stars seemed close enough to touch. There, she handed him a box made from a dark, polished stone. When he opened it, inside was her old blade, the one she had used the day she saved him. "It's yours now," she said. "You've earned it. I will craft another. This one belongs to the one who changed my path." Tareen held the blade with both hands. It was lighter than it looked, still sharp, and carried the scent of wild air and lightning. He bowed his head to her, not as a soldier, but as something more. "We were born from different stars," he said. "But you are my home now." She stepped close and placed her forehead against his. The bond was not spoken, it was felt in the blood, in the silence, in the fire that had never left their eyes. They remained together under the stars until the sky turned purple with morning light. Below them, the tribe returned to daily life. But high above, something new blinked in orbit. A signal that wasn't there before. A message coded in human encryption, bouncing across sectors. Tareen saw it before anyone else. His connection to Earth Command still allowed him to detect transmissions. The message was short but dangerous. Earth wasn't retreating. They were gathering. The Huntress followed his gaze and narrowed her eyes. "They're not done with us." "No," Tareen replied. "But we're not the same as before." She placed a hand on his shoulder and said nothing more. Together, they watched the message drift across the stars like a silent warning. War was coming again. But this time, they were ready to meet it. The stars above the planet flickered with tension as new human ships entered the system. They didn't come in silence this time. They came in full force, with squadrons, battleships, and massive carriers. Their signals flooded every frequency, repeating one demand: surrender. The human named Tareen Wells. The Huntress tribe made no reply. Instead, they prepared. Warriors sharpened their blades. Guardians of the mountain activated the ancient shields. Energy barriers lit up across the forests. The planet did not hide. It stood tall and ready to face what was coming. Tareen stood at the edge of the cliff, dressed in ceremonial armor forged from metals of the mountain. His eyes watched the sky, without fear. He had once been a scared boy running from a burning colony. Now he was a bonded flame, chosen by warriors who had made him their own. He turned as the Huntress approached, her armor darker now, trimmed in glowing red. She moved with purpose, her blade already at her side. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes held the weight of what was coming, but her voice remained steady when she spoke. "This will not be a fight to survive. It will be a fight to prove who we are." Tareen nodded slowly. "Let them come. We do not stand alone." The first strike came fast. A blast from orbit shattered the outer cliffs. Dropships broke through the clouds like falling stars. Earth Command had not come to negotiate. They came to take and to destroy. But this time, Tareen did not wait. He led the defense across the battlefield with the Huntress beside him. Warriors formed lines around the temple grounds. Their blades met rifles. Their courage met machines. The ground shook under the force of war, but the tribe did not break. Tareen's old instructors were among the attackers, men who had trained him, leaders who had once called him a lost cause. Now they faced him across the battlefield and saw something they didn't understand, a human who no longer belonged to Earth. One of the commanders tried to reason with him. "Come back. We can clear your name. You don't have to die with them." Tareen raised his blade. "I was born human, but I became more when you abandoned me. This is my home now." The commander raised his weapon, but he was too slow. Tareen's strike knocked it away and ended the fight in a single blow. Across the field, warriors chanted his name as they pushed back wave after wave of human forces. The turning point came when the central power core of the human-led ship was damaged by a strike from the temple tower. The blast lit up the sky and cut off Earth Command's fleet communication. Confusion spread among their forces, and some ships began to retreat. The remaining soldiers on the ground were surrounded. The Huntress gave the order to stand down. No unnecessary blood was spilled. The tribe believed in strength, not cruelty. Those who dropped their weapons were spared and taken away from the sacred grounds. When the battle ended, the mountain was scarred but still standing. Smoke rose from broken trees, but the temple's heart still burned with light. The people began to sing, not of victory, but of survival and unity. Tarin sat alone on the temple steps as the sun rose. His armor was cracked, his hands were bloodied, but his spirit was whole. The Huntress joined him quietly, her presence warm beside him. She placed her hand over his. "You did more than return. You became one of us. You became something stronger than what you were born as." Tarin looked at her and smiled. "I found you, and now I will never leave." She leaned into him, her voice barely above a whisper. "We are bonded in flame, now and forever." From that day forward, the tribe spoke of a human who walked among them like a storm of fire and steel. A boy once saved who returned as a warrior who became legend, beside the one who first saw the fire in him. Together, they became the guardians of a world that no one would ever threaten again.